Yeah, we're back.
Okay, Jeff Frazier's entered the fray, and that's why all distractions should be directed towards him. All right, what are we going to talk about? Jim, so why don't you start it out with why this show is called what it is and why you're so under the influence?
Well, it really has to come down to the fact that ultimately this driving issue is going to come to bear. And I think it's going to be pretty soon. And what's going to happen is there's going to be this recommendation from this panel that was assembled, and who really knows what that recommendation will be, but what I can almost guarantee with 100% certainty is that it will result in a nanogram per milliliter per se limit on THC in the bloodstream of anyone operating a motor vehicle. And when that happens, the police will absolutely 100% be able to fabricate a plan to begin arresting people. And not just arresting people, but drawing their blood against their will. It's going to get real here, real quick. And I hope that all that we've invested as far as time and resources and trying to get certain politicians elected pays off. But some of them are saying some pretty crazy things.
Like
Yes,
they're saying that it's a public safety issue and that a per se limit makes sense.
Who's saying that?
Well, I don't want to mention any names, but anybody can Google.
Well, I've heard that from other community members too, not just elected officials, but people in the community.
And I think there's this false perspective that a per se limit is rooted in science, and I was just talking.
But what science?
Right. Well,
science. Show me the science.
Well, there's a history of per se limits not being rooted in science. So I was just chatting with Steve on this topic before the show, and Steve was a former police officer, and he certainly arrested his fair share of drunk drivers when he was on patrol. And what I had said to him was that originally, back in the day, I believe the per se limit was 0.15. And that was what all the evidence pointed to. And over the years, there was a lot of lobbying being done by groups like MAD to get the limit reduced. And they were very successful in their lobbying.
0.08, right?
Well, now it is now.
Yeah.
And my point there is that number is more solidly rooted in political lobbying than it is in science. And I'm not advocating for drunk driving, so don't get it twisted. But I'm saying that the same thing is about...
There's more science in that than cannabis, though. Cannabis
for
is
sure, 100%.
Totally
absolutely. And
situation.
I mean, I think the big thing there is there's study after study after study that document what happens when people get drunk or drink alcohol and get behind the wheel of an automobile. And it never ends well. The data supports that consistently. There really isn't such a study that supports the same conclusion about marijuana. So I think that if we really root it in science, again, and I've said it before, and I'll continue to repeat it, that if we want to root it in science, the best thing to do is let the police officers do their job and prove that A, there was bad driving, and B, that the bad driving was due to the driver being intoxicated by some substance. And if they can prove those two things, then the suspect should go to jail.
It's impairment.
Right.
It's impairment.
So, anyhow.
I find it remarkable, if I may, that this interest by our government, the money that's spent, does not recognize the existing law. That is that by their very curiosity of trying to come up with
because the law is
something
new. Is that why, Michael? Because the law is new, or is it because they're resisting the law, or is it because what is it? They're just ignorant.
I'm saying whatever. Let's assume we have an understanding of what the purpose and nature of this recommendation and what is going to happen. Right, this topic of marijuana is legal. How is law enforcement going to deal with it from a driving perspective? And there's a information gathering and a task force, some kind of recommendations can be made to the legislature, and they're going to adopt something. Now, this very act, this investigation, to gather and ask for a recommendation, means that whatever it is currently, which is zero tolerance, needs an investigation. They didn't go about saying, listen, we're undoing that because we need an investigation. It's almost like an admission that the current existing law is not founded by information, founded in or within information. It's just a zero tolerance. It makes no sense. It's not intellectual. So whatever they come up with right now, there's not a lot of optimism. But the debate shouldn't be what's best for law enforcement, and it shouldn't be what's best for the citizens. It should be what is the way in which law enforcement is going to be able to, or how do we want our laws written in order to prove crimes? What other crimes exist that are strict liability, where there's no,
statutory rape,
other than the Romeo and Juliet statutory rape, and other situations too, but putting that aside, what other strict liability where the act itself is the crime? It doesn't involve any other culpability, doesn't involve a specific intent, any mental and total general intent crime. Driving, in my blood I have a substance. Nothing else beyond that. Strict liability. The punishment is that. What other crimes exist like that anyway? Hearing no objections, I will enter judgment for myself. So the point I'm making is the debate is surrounding the wrong points of interest. It should be really in what evidence exists to prove a crime, and to suggest that there's a number in someone's system, an anagram number, that equates to a crime because they're behind the wheel of a motor vehicle that's operating. I don't know that it's founded in any kind of sense. I know there was some chitter chatter. Jamie, add your 2 cents here.
Yes.
But
because chitter chat is needed. Okay.
well,
Chit-chat.
let's just throw out some rumor and speculation of what we've heard. If there's going to be a number, the argument I've heard is let's just have a huge number, right?
That is not a good idea.
And then when I heard that, my response was, there's
I know
just
what
as
your
much
response
science that supports that huge number that supports whatever other number you can come up with, big or small.
Right.
It's amazing that you're responsible for everything by being such an optimist and
He is. He really is.
it's so undiplomatic in your politics. And I'm not suggesting that anyone settle. I'm not a settler. Don't hire me to settle. I'm saying this, that if there was going to be a bend that says, the law enforcement needs something, because we don't want to let them go off on their crazy drug recognition witnesses. I don't call them experts. They're witnesses. And they need something. So, what would someone come up with if they could? Jamie, let's say that was your choice. You got 20 people standing here with a gun pointed to your head. You have to give an answer of some kind. What's it going to be?
And what's the question?
Shoot him.
Shoot him.
I said if you had to come up with a number.
Oh, if number for the anagram? Okay, I had to come up with a number? Yeah. 1 quintillion.
Anyone else care to jump in?
Bananagrams.
Listen, you understand? Listen, I am not in favor. I agree. Impairment's got to be proven.
Yeah, there's no science. You can't come
Understood, but they're going to come up with a number. So if you had, you see what I'm saying?
Why?
What?
It doesn't.
Why?
It doesn't matter.
Well, I'm
Three-
saying to you, there is a number
3.14?
that's highly unlikely to be
When
a
your
number
bloodstream
that,
is at least
like,
50%
I don't know. I don't think
Simpson
I've ever
oil.
had a case where someone, is in like
I think the panel can
50s or the
conclude that there's not
100s.
enough science to create a number. And
I'm fine with that.
That is the answer.
No, I'm saying they went like 50. If they did like 50 or 100,
But they are going to come up with a number,
which
Jamie.
is not scientifically proven to, but it's just a number. I don't think I've ever seen I don't think because it doesn't happen that way. I don't think it's a number that anyone. And if
No,
they
they're
do,
just
it's for
pulling
10
numbers
seconds.
out of their ass. That
Well,
Do
mean
you think the
nothing.
panel did some experiments?
We know enough about this. I know that unlike alcohol, the ingestion of cannabis into
Yes.
the system operates much differently. Alcohol, for example, this is-
Metabolism is different.
What?
Your body breaks it down different.
Yes,
It
but there's
metabolizes
a,
it differently.
the curve of the absorption and expulsion of the stomach is more of a gradual curve and a
It's
what
very,
do we call it? What does it
very
look like, a
gentle,
mountain? Like a
very
mountain
gentle
peak, you know what I
curve.
mean?
Gentle
Or like
curve.
what is that called? What is it called? What am I trying to say? Like a
Doesn't the
A hump.
normal bell
cannabinoids
curve, like that,
bond
kinda
to the
up and
fat tissues?
stays and then
The
comes
same as
down.
they do when you extract. They
Yeah, but
bond
not
to
even
fat.
that. Much longer on the top. But listen, but unlike that, cannabis is upon the last ingestion, it spikes up as high as it's going to be, and it stays there for not more than 10 minutes, and it drops significantly down to like 12, 10, 6, 8, 4, and most of the blood that's drawn is in that range, and that it'll stay at that range for many, many days.
Well, let me ask you this. Can the blood test tell the difference between anandamide, the endogenous cannabinoids, and plant-based cannabinoids? I mean, you should.
Probably
if you have
not.
a blood test or a saliva test, you should come back positive for anandamide. It's a naturally occurring endogenous in your body. And how much? And what does a nanogram count for that? I mean, they're just making this shit
The
up.
THC, though, they can
That's what I'm
identify
saying.
THC in the blood. They say,
Right.
and but again, this is here. The as I have represented other cases, the THC, active THC, depending on how it's used, it gets stored in fat cells,
Right.
And-
then it gets
Exactly.
released.
That's what I'm
and then
saying.
gets released during
So what? People just
period
won't be
of
able
time
to
where, like,
drive.
you're in a fight or flight syndrome when, for example, the police might be drawing blood from you or
Yeah,
taking you
and
to a
I-
hospital.
I definitely don't know anybody that gets nervous when the police are pulling them over either. That would actually end up causing that manifestation. But
And a point of interest, the studies that have been done, there's one, in fighting these kind of cases, the zero tolerance, even some of the, even when people had cards early on and you weren't allowed to use a medical marijuana defense, things like that. I remember, Michigan State Police Forensic, they were,
bunch of assholes.
they have a very difficult time establishing the accuracy of the results anyways.
It's voodoo.
It is voodoo.
Voodoo. It's voodoo.
Chaos. Just accident on the set here.
Universe.
All right,
Chaos.
things are
Chaos.
falling apart.
Right.
But
Panic in Detroit. Hemp holidays.
I swear.
Hemp Holdings.
You should have seen
Oh, I
this.
thought it said Pimp
You gotta
Holidays.
get
I'm
this
like,
crowded,
whoa, when do
like
those
this-
start?
This greater Latin American cannabis effort. The Colombians are.
Nice.
Yeah, there's a
So where are we?
well, we're
Is Tim Beck calling in? When does he
Tim
arrive?
is calling in 3 minutes.
Supposed to be calling in around 9.
Can we take a break? Do you want to talk about cannabis? I mean,
we
would you
could
mind
do. We
talking
could
about
go to the
cannabis and driving?
news. We could
He
go.
actually asked me what we were going to talk about.
There's so many things to talk about
And I
with
said,
Tim.
Tim,
Could be so many
let's get
things.
you on there and we'll see what.
Why don't we?
Yeah.
Why don't we do the news and then we'll take a break and then we'll come back.
No,
to-
he's coming
Well,
in
no,
at 9.
it's
It's
Tim
3
Donovan
minutes to
is
9.
he's
Decide
calling
that
in. We're not
Tim
gonna
waits
diss
20 minutes.
He's
now.
not going to wait. Let's get him on now. Wait.
He's
I'll
not
wait for
on.
him.
He's not
Take a
here.
3-minute break and wait for him. How's that? Let's do that.
What?
3-minute break.
3-minute break. Okay.
3-minute break. What's that going
All
to do
right.
for us?
Take a 3-minute break. We're not going to do just do it. Take a break. We'll re-gear. Here we go. Do this. And it's a 9-minute song.
Okay.